Well, look who it is.
Nice to be here with you.
I know, time flies, eh? I think it must have been, has it been a year, 2 years
Is
since
it
you,
2 years? What?
maybe a year and a bit since we together launched Let's Grow Young.
Wow.
Yeah, I know
And
it's
look at you
great.
go. It's going so well for you.
Yeah, it's getting there slowly, but this isn't about me, it's about what you've been up to. I think since we did our first episode, we've ran probably around 30 or 40 other interviews, and
Mhm.
we've gone from one episode with 0 subscribers to 30, 40 odd episodes, which with the help of the powers above, 50,000 subscribers. And so things are moving, but I'll always be grateful for the episode that you did with me, Lisa, because that really got the ball rolling. And thank you for coming on again.
It's my pleasure to be here with you.
No worries. So just as a recap, the first episode that I did of Let's Grow Young, I think with hindsight, it was quite a difficult episode, if I'm honest, because we covered so much. Just to remind people, Lisa has had a whirlwind of a life, including really, really top end modeling jobs. I think we talked about Model of the Year on Elle magazine or Vogue magazine from a teenage age, the difficulties and traumas that went with that. You then married a pretty famous chef, and we won't go into how that marriage went. Right? You had traumas related to personal family experiences, I'll say. You presented various TV shows, and we covered all of that. We covered all of that in the first episode, and we're not going to cover it again, but I will put a link to that episode on this channel. But I always come back to that episode because people keep coming back to me and saying, we discovered Let's Grow Young, and we really love your first episode. So there's something in that where I've got to go back to being that really amateur interviewer from the first episode rather than trying to be polished, because people never say, we loved your last episode. They always come back saying they loved the first one, which I was just...
That's so interesting, isn't it?
It is. I think whether it's authenticity, whether it's...
It's that. I think it's that.
I think I didn't have much of a structure in my head in my first one. I was kind of not expecting Let's Grow Young to grow, so I was just happy making a fool of myself.
But isn't that great to go into something without expectations? This is when people have sessions with me. I was just like, don't have any expectations, because as soon as you have expectations, you always feel a bit let down. But if you go into something without expectations, look, you've got 50,000 people following you now. I mean, that's amazing. That's fantastic.
It is crazy. And also, Lisa actually, whether she accepts it or not, I think played a major part in curing my insomnia and sleep issues. We had quite a laugh about it, my session of inner dance and how I walked into the session and walked out. but then I forced myself back in again. And I had a conversation earlier this week with someone who's having sleep problems, and I told them about my story with you and how I think it fixed me. So I will be forever grateful to Lisa, and my wife will be even more grateful because I sleep quite well.
That's fantastic.
Thank you again.
See, I prefer someone to come into a session with me with a bit cynical and kind of not believing, and then again, rather than having expectations that it's going to be this amazing thing, but then it's a bit like you. I remember in the session you were like, nah, not sure if this is working. I have to go away and think about it, and then you went home and you had this longest nap. And you like had a proper deep sleep. And I remember in the session saying, always, that it doesn't. It's not just in the session when you're with me now. It always works like when you get home, and you need time to let the session to unfold. And that's exactly what happened to you. So no, I love that.
Indeed, and Lisa, I've been following you ever since then, and I've seen the growth of Inner Dance. The purpose of this episode really is to get an update of where you've been taking Inner Dance, how it's been growing, how it's evolved. But first and foremost, shall we remind people of what Inner Dance actually is?
Yes, because not a lot of people have heard about what inner dance is, and it sounds like some kind of, you have to put your spandex on and get ready for your dance moves. Nothing to do with that at all. Inner dance is a healing modality that works with frequencies. So you lie on a yoga mat in Shavasana, which means you lie on your back, and you listen to these specially curated playlists that work with your brain waves to elicit lucid dreaming state. So it also helps with neuroplasticity, it helps calm you down, it helps helps rebalance you so you can get to perfect homeostasis. And the more research we're doing, the more we realize actually these frequencies really do work. So we're now trying to get it into many institutions. And this is the exciting bit. So when I first met you, Sandra, which is a little while ago, I was invited to give a talk at the wellness center that we met at. And when I was talking, there was another woman called Coach Mara Taylor there who was also giving a talk. And I was blown away by what she said. And I invited her to an inner dance experience with me. And at that time afterwards, she said, because she was the first person to put this particular therapy into the maximum security prisons in America. And she has an incredible reputation, and now it's spread all the way across America. And she said to me 2 years ago, she's like, you need to take this to the prison system in the States. And I was like, absolutely no way in hell. Am I going to be putting this with all the angry men in prison? Are you joking? And she started laughing. She said, you're not going to feel like that when you get there. I was just like, no. I just wasn't ready, Sanj. I had my own things that I wanted to look at and deal with, and also with my past, there's an issue. There were things around men with their anger and things that I had to look at within myself before I felt safe enough to go into that kind of environment. But anyway, long story short, she invited me back this year, and I actually said yes. And in February this year, I and an incredible woman called Caroline from Scotland, who also does inner dance, and she got inner dance into a Scottish prison, went to America and we went to LA County Jail, and then we went to Calipatra State Prison. In the jail, we met the veterans in the psychiatric unit, and in Calipatra State Prison, we were working with the maximum security prisoners, introducing inner dance as a healing modality. Now, it's not inner dance how you experienced it. It's inner dance sandwiched with these cognitive behavioral tools of GOGI, which is what Coach Mara Taylor put together with the prisoners. And I've got to say, the reaction was so beautiful, Sand. Well, first, I had to give myself a talking to because, I went straight into judgment about the prisoners before I went there. The only reference point I had was like Prison Break on the telly and all these scary things you see on the telly. So that was my reference point. And when I got there, what I saw was something extremely different. What I saw were these men who had really worked on themselves in a huge way. And with these GOGI tools, they have these different coursework, the course books that they have to do. And it's all about holding yourself accountable. It's about writing your life story, seeing where you went wrong, forgiving yourself in the past, and trying to be the best person that you can be today. And basically, when they had their session, the playlist that we played was almost like GOGI radio. So it was like embedding all the tools into their bodies. And I was playing my drum at the same time when they had their session. And the feedback was unbelievable because the feedback, one guy said, I have never experienced internal freedom before, and that's what I felt in the session. I mean, that's something that people outside of prison don't even feel, let alone someone who's going to be locked up for the rest of their lives. Another guy said, I could feel my daughter in my arms when she was first born. That was the only time I saw my daughter. This is like 18 years before, and he could revisit that feeling of holding his daughter and what that felt to him. And another one said, because we've been getting these feedback forms, he was saying that I always thought I was a really angry man that had no chance to become who I was as a baby, like the pureness of an inner child. And he said through the session, he realized that he is still that pure soul. And he is able to access that bit of him now because he thought he was all bad. And now that he realizes that he isn't all bad, he really wants to step into that goodness and do service and help people in the future and help others. So I think the other thing with my judgment, I realized also when I spoke to them, I heard their stories, Sanj, and I heard every single one of them came from a traumatic situation. Every single one of them came from abuse. Their parents were in jail. They literally had nothing. And in order to feel that family sense, they would join gangs so they could have some kind of sense of belonging. And of course, the gangs would make them do you'd have to do terrible things to be part of the gangs. And I was thinking to myself, if I was in that situation, if I was born with parents who didn't love me and care about me, and I had, I was forced to do crystal meth age 7, I might end up killing my mum if she was the one who was abusing me, because I don't know how I would feel in that situation. It just made me realize I need to take my judgments back, because all of these guys, had they been given love from a young age, they would have turned out very, very differently. They would not be in jail. They wouldn't be doing the same things that they did in their past. So I guess that cracked my heart open, and it made me, really like, as much as I work on my judgment, it still pops up. It's still there. And it's made me just kind of rethink the way that I look at people, and the way that, yeah, everybody's got a story. And it's so easy to judge, prisoners in jail, they must have done terrible things. Yeah, but the question is, why have they done terrible things? So, yeah, I just found it a really humbling experience. And I'm going to be going back in June to do more of it. I'm being offered a job to go back for 4 months, and we are writing training manuals to train other facilitators to do this GOGI inner GOGI dance methodology, and we want to be spreading it out all over America, and also bring it back to the UK and other prisons around the world too, because it really does work. We just need to collect all the data off the back of it, so that we can, come back to the UK and be like, look, this really works. We need it in our country. You know, what do you think? So that's my goal this year. But also, in order to do that, we have to raise funds. So I'm just literally asking all of my friends and everyone I know to offer a little bit, so that we can raise funds, so we can go back to as many prisons as we possibly can in the States.
Okay, so there's a pitch there. Lisa needs funds. Let's get her some funds.
Need some money.
Lisa, on a serious note, why did you choose prisoners for this? Because you alluded to it. You used the term internal freedom. But how can you possibly get internal freedom when you're banged up in a prison cell for maybe even life sentences? How's that possible?
Well, it is possible. Look at Nelson Mandela, look at Gandhi. They all had an internal freedom. It's the way you look at life. It's like changing the way you think about things.
But would you say that's, sorry, I'm just going to interrupt there. Nelson Mandela and Gandhi are way out there, right? They were political prisoners to an extent, right? They had a clear, defined purpose.
Yes.
With these guys, and I'm making assumptions, I'm assuming, as you described, some of them came from gangs, some of them may have done some quite horrific things. They weren't out there to change the worldview on race and ethnicity or whatever. They've acted in some pretty unlawful ways, potentially, right? And so how do you help people who aren't Mandela, who aren't Mahatma Gandhi, become free?
It's through,
who don't have that bigger purpose?
yeah, it's through teaching them there's another way. It's through teaching them that they can achieve harmony through using these GOGI tools. It's teaching them how to reprogram their thoughts, so that instead of going straight into a reaction, that they're taking a breath before they react to anything. They're belly breathing. They're thinking of what part of their brain are they using. Are they using the smart part, the emotional part, or the old part? And as soon as you slow everything down, and you can become accountable of how you react to things. So once they take a breath, they realize, okay, so maybe there are different ways. What are the choices that we're making? And with those choices, are they positive? Are they productive? Are they powerful? And if it's like giving them the tools to how to think about things before they do them, how to act. And the last tool in the GOGI tool set, which is the tools of freedom, is it explains to you how important service is. And when they've gone through all of these tools, they realize actually by giving to others, you're getting back yourself. So all of these guys, as much as they've done heinous things in the past, which they should never have done, they realize now they're accountable for what they've done in the past, and all they have is today, and they want to be the best versions of themselves that they can be today. I mean, these tools, as much as they're in prisons, I'm teaching it to kids. I'm using it in myself. I mean, I think everybody should learn them. They're just basic tools to how to be your best self that you can be, to promote harmony and peace in your life, and to make yourself proud of yourself by using them.
And ultimately, these are human beings, right? And so they've done something at a point in time in their life. And we have a prison system in the UK, which is in the newspapers every other day for some heinous acts going on in prison. There was a story the other day about some prison guards in the UK getting life-threatening injuries because they were attacked by other prisoners. And you used the term such as homeostasis earlier. And so you take these humans, put them into an environment where you could say the dopamine starts going on to pain and fear, and that creates certain actions. Do you think through inner dance and GOGI, you are genuinely taking those gremlins off the fear path and
Yeah,
bringing the homeostasis up like this, and you're seeing
absolutely.
changes in that community in the prison? And how do those changes in that community manifest?
Well, that's the thing, because the prisoners are much more peaceful. So it's much easier for the wardens to look after it. So that's why the wardens are embracing this, because the prisoners are seeing things through before they act. Instead of like, okay, so if one prisoner, someone comes up to them and tries to start a fight, instead of actually going into the fight, which would have been their knee-jerk reaction initially, they'll think it through. They'll be like, so what if I do this? So what if I react to this? This is another one of the tools, what if? So what if I react to this how I usually act? Or what if there's a different choice? What if I was to walk away? Because if I was to walk away, perhaps I would, and I don't get into this fight, I will be let out of prison sooner. Whereas if I do get into this fight, I'm going to be stuck in prison longer, so I'm not going to see my loved ones. So in that circumstance, it just takes them, it takes them a moment to catch a breath so they can walk away from situations. So it doesn't only affect the prisoners, it affects their families, it affects everybody around them. And also it gives them a sense of belonging, a sense of family, because when you join these groups, it's like you sit around in a circle and they talk about their feelings. I didn't think prisoners could talk about their feelings. I thought they all had to put on this big front and be like, don't show any fear and all that kind of stuff. But these blokes, they were talking more about their feelings than I talk about mine. They were talking about love. They were talking about expansion. They were talking about, helping others. And I've got to tell you one thing, Sanj. I was talking to this one guy. I was saying that I really want to bring this to the UK, and I didn't know how to do it because I've never done anything like this before. And he was saying, well, you're going to need to raise money because you need to buy the books for the prisons in England. And I was just like, well, I can't afford to buy all their books for them. And how would I do that? And he was just like, I can't do an American accent, but in an American accent, he was just like, girl, we got you. And he was just like, I'm going to ask all the prisoners here to put their hands in their pockets to give their money, and we're going to write personal letters to the prisoners in the UK to show them that they're not alone, and their friends over the pond will look after them and look out for them, and if we can do it, they can do it. And I was just like, damn, this is a prisoner saying that. You don't really hear that outside of prison. So yeah, they're just little things like that just really made me think differently about the whole situation, what it means to be a prisoner and to be living like that. I mean, I met one guy who was in solitary confinement for 17 years. Imagine not speaking for 17 years. I mean, crazy.
And what did you discuss with him? I mean, if I take an analogy of your everyday human who's not in solitary confinement, who's with his family, and I've got some clients who are almost in confinement, yet they're surrounded by a world of people. And so, how do you talk to the prisoner who's in solitary confinement? This is probably quite a tough question. How do you apply that to just your everyday angry man, as you call him, or it could be an angry woman as well?
Yeah, angry person. Well, in solitary confinement, I couldn't speak to them, but their textbooks do. So with this bloke in particular, he just studied. He did all of the GOGI courses, and when I met him, he was talking to me about quantum physics. He was telling me all about these therapy tools and all, and I actually said to him at the time, I was just like, you should be sitting here. Not that I want to be sitting where you are, but you should be sitting here, and you should be taking the group because you know the language better than I do. This guy was incredibly educated. So in that circumstance, you have a choice. You have a choice to, just be miserable and, spiral, or you have a choice to make the best out of the situation and learn and educate yourself and try to be the best version of yourself you can be. And that's a choice that he took. So for me, we talk about prisons, but I think we all live in some type of a prison. We're stuck in the prison of our minds and our thoughts. And what we need to do is open the doors to our thoughts so that we can think in a positive way rather than going down the negative spiral, which often we do. I still have to catch myself sometimes, particularly around tech. Do you remember this morning? Particularly around tech, because I feel
It took
utterly
police
useless.
for like 18 minutes to get through the tech today. But But that wasn't your fault.
So tech things, for example, I feel really stupid. My internal dialogue were like, you're really stupid, you can't do this. But actually, if I turn it on this, my dialogue on its head, I'm like, well, okay, well, maybe I'm not good at tech, but I am good at this. I am good at helping people. I am good at energy work, and maybe someone can help me with my tech. It's not that bad. So, whereas back in the day, I thought I'd have to be good at everything. Now I realize I can't be. So I give myself a bit
Yeah.
of a break. Again, that's
Yeah.
my internal freedom.
Yeah. But Lisa, you talked about frequencies and
Yes.
neuroplasticity earlier. Now,
Yes.
just talk to me about what frequencies are and what they do to the brain, and how in the first episode I called it bonging the drum, and how playing the music and bonging the drum hits various frequencies, and
Yes.
how your brain deals with that. It certainly had an impact on me, but what's the
Yeah.
science behind it?
Well, when I was in prison, I played the drum. And the feedback from me playing the drum, I played it like a heartbeat. And the feedback from that was that the prisoners had memories of when they were in the womb, right? So they had that heartbeat. So I started the process off by helping them feel safe by playing the heartbeat. The frequencies work on the brain. Our inner dance playlists have completely changed. And it changed because I had a client who had a child who was neurodiverse, and they didn't want to put a label on this kid. And I spoke to my teacher, Pai Villaraza, and I said, how am I going to help this child? He's 7 years old. He's not going to lie down. He's going to be running around the room. I can't lie him down for an hour. How are we going to get to him? And he was just like, we'll make these special playlists with these sounds, and you play it to him at night time. So when we play these, the first week, the school called up the parents saying, what medication is this kid on? Because he's suddenly very calm at school. He's concentrating. He doesn't need to be apart from the other kids. Within the second week, this child has stopped wetting his bed, and he was wetting his bed prior to that. And he was sleeping like 8 hours a night. Prior to that, he wasn't. So these frequencies work on different parts of your brain, particularly the hypothalamus. And the hypothalamus, it governs your sleep cycle, it governs your temperature, sex, your metabolism. And so what happens if you play these frequencies and they work in the brain, it starts repatterning the brain to more healthy habits. And so you get better homeostasis, like with this kid. And so based on this, using the 7-year-old as an example, all of the playlists started changing, because before it was more musical, and these were just quite abrasive sounds. And from that, we started doing more and more research to how this can work in hospitals. If it's working with this kid, perhaps it can work in hospitals. And then from the hospitals, we were like, well, perhaps this can work in prisons, because we can calm the prisoners down with these frequencies. And so that's when I introduced it to the prison system in America. And what we're doing now is these prisoners have these iPad-y things. They're not iPads, but like tablets, I think you call them. Sorry, so not tech.
Is that a tech word? iPad things. You could just say they have iPads.
And it's to the intranet in the prison, and they are allowed access to these sounds, these frequencies, so they listen to them when they're going to sleep. And they're finding that they're a little bit like the 7-year-old kid. They're just much calmer. They're just not reactive. They're just like going about their day in a very different way. So now that we've able to put that in the prisons on this tablety thing, it can get out to many, many different prisons. So now it's got to 38,000 prisoners and 400 prisons.
It's amazing. And how do people access those sounds? If people listening to this episode want to access those frequencies and those sounds that you mentioned?
Those particular ones are available on GOGI tools. Getting Out by Going In. And my teacher, Pai Villaraza, all of his things are on YouTube, all of his playlists are on Spotify. You'll be able to follow him that way. He's an amazing guy. He really is.
I'm not going to go into GOGI too much, because we're going to be having Coach
Sure.
Taylor coming on talking about GOGI in a few weeks. So what we've heard there is that you have certain frequencies that basically alter your state of being and bring you back into homeostasis. For the everyday person who is just going through life struggles, instead of just coming to visit you and going to a clinic, what are the kind of tips that you can give to people to tap into those frequencies while they're on the tube, while they're getting stressed at home, while they're getting stressed at work?
Yeah, because I do that. I know a lot of people. Meditation's the way forward. I find it really hard to meditate. Are you good at meditation? I bet you are.
I'm not. I'm
Are
absolutely
you not?
crap at it.
Okay.
No. I'm absolutely crap at it. But what I would say two things. There's passive meditation where you close your eyes and you just say, or
Yeah.
I'm rubbish at that. But I've become increasingly good at active meditation, which is when somebody has annoyed me or a situation has irritated me,
Mm-hmm.
rather than the old 5 years ago person who would just jump in.
Yeah.
I've learnt the sensory mechanism between my vagus nerve and my mouth and my brain
Yeah.
and the signaling to just step back and just
Yeah.
step out of it. And so
Amazing.
so active meditation is what I'm becoming better at. I think passive meditation is something I need to try, but it's just not me. My brain's constantly
I'm
ticking
the
and I
same.
can't concentrate.
I'm the same, and also I'm ADD, so my brain's going constantly. So
Yeah.
if you're asking me to sit there and quiet meditate, I'm just not. I'm going to get up, make coffee. I'm just not. However, what I do is I will lie down and listen to an inner dance playlist. I'll listen to one of these ones that the prisoners listen to. My teachers made 4 different playlists, and they're all for calming. And so at night time, before I go to sleep, or in the day, I will put my earphones on and I will listen for half an hour, and it's the same as a meditation for me, because and I do it particularly when I'm tired, and when you've had quite a long day and you feel as if you need a bit of a nap, or between clients I've got half an hour.
I did that yesterday.
Yeah, literally I'll put my headphones on, I'll lie down for half an hour and I'll listen to these frequencies, and by the time I'm up I'm like full of energy again, and it really gets me going. But it is like a meditation, because it gets rid of the tiredness, I find. And also with these playlists, they have a way of like getting me into a deeper sleep state when I'm sleeping as well. So there's special playlists for sleeping, which you can find on Pi Villaraz's playlist on Spotify and everything. And there's special, very short playlists that for the prisoners that are up and you're able to listen to, that you can listen to before you go to sleep as well, that calms you down.
Yeah. Lisa, you mentioned this example of a prisoner who talked about holding his daughter, and you talked
Yes.
about examples of people remembering not remembering, you can't remember, but thinking that there was a time when they were in the womb. Now, I recall when I had my session with you, actually understanding why I was not able to sleep, and it goes back to a traumatic incident I had when I was a teenager, a very highly traumatic incident. And you said something about it's like picking up a piece of a jigsaw on the floor and reattaching it to your body.
Mm-hmm.
Is this what you're doing with the prisoners? Is
I
this?
guess so. I don't remember saying that to you, but I'm going with it.
That's what you said. That's what you said.
Yeah, I guess it's the same thing, because, with these prisoners, that they're learning these tools cognitively. And I think by listening to the playlist, they're embedding them with the frequencies in their body. It's like GOGI radio. I guess that's the best way of describing it. Because you're not just listening with your ears, it's like your whole body's listening and embedding it.
Yeah.
If
Would
that
you
makes
argue?
sense.
It does. Would you argue though? This may sound really stupid, but as a prisoner, you've got nothing else that you can focus on other than yourself, right? And then what I mean by this is you're not running the 9 to 5, you're not dropping the kids off to football and cricket, you're not running around working out where to pay the next bill. And I mean this with full respect, in the shoes of a everyday non-prisoner. And so you have a lot of time to look inwards, and albeit in very difficult surroundings. The everyday guy like me, there's shitloads going on in our daily transactional lives. We really get the time to go inwards. And so it's not really a question, but a bit of kind of perspective there. And how do we
make time?
Yeah, how do you make time? I'm just looking at it from the eyes of playing devil's advocate in terms of just people's everyday lives. If someone was to take me, I don't want to spend 25 years in prison. Of course, I don't.
Nor do I.
But if someone said to me, Sanj, here's a month, we're going to send you for a month, and want you to focus just on you. All the other stuff around your life, don't worry, we're going to manage that. I think I'd come out with similar perspective. So, what do you say to the skeptics who are going to listen to this and say, "Well, that's not me"? What I want people to do is understand that you can adapt this into your everyday life.
Yeah. Being in prison was, I see what you're saying, but you could also be in prison and be really freaking resentful and angry and be like ruminating of your past and just be like in this anger and in this like fight or flight feeling and not utilizing that time, which a huge majority of them, they don't utilize that time. That's where they sit, in that anger and their addictions and all these things. But these tools give them freedom. However, it isn't just for prisoners, Sanj. The more that I learn about this, the more I've realized that I'm actually using them every day for me. And I'm already giving these tools, I'm already using them for my clients. And I'm using them with kids as well, because if you empower kids from a young age to realize that they have a choice with how they think, they are not their thoughts. I didn't realize that as a child. I thought my thoughts were me. That they have the power to change the way they think and to change the way they feel about things. Imagine what the kid will grow up to be like, being that empowered. It's not just for prisoners. These are basic life tools that have been put into prison, but they're so simplistic, everybody can use them. I mean, I'm even told them to my kids. Anyone I know, I'm sharing them with. They're like, "Wow, that's so easy," because they're easy to remember as well.
Yeah, it's a perfect answer you've just given me. Actually, it was the answer I was hoping you'd give, because I think I'm playing the antagonizer here, but you've described in the context of a prison, where people have changed their mindset in the context of a huge pressure to just sit and do nothing. But we have the means on the outside world to actually create that change. When I created that change, I actually collapsed on the tube station in London, and that forced my change.
Mm.
But looking back, if I'd had the tools that you're describing and someone intervened earlier to say, actually, Sanj, you've got your priorities and your energies and your frequencies all wrong, I don't think I would have ever gone through that. And so there's something here in longevity where people talk about purpose, funding energy, homeostasis. There are points where people can stop, and I just don't think we have a system at the moment which is designed to help people to stop. And when we talk about workplaces and intervention mechanisms, the only card that people have to intervene is to go off sick, right? And I think this sort of education needs to come out more broadly into society.
Oh my goodness, it'd be so great if this was in the workplace. It'd be really fantastic. It would be so
Writing a
useful.
letter, I'm busy writing a letter to the Minister of Health at the moment to basically say, look, there's a number of outcomes that can be achieved, whether it's prison services, hospital, NHS waiting times, preventative health, and this is the type of stuff that you can do, and the type of stuff you do is going to be in that letter.
Oh, I'm so glad.
It's my attempt to antagonize the health system, say, look, I've had enough of watching and listening.
Mm,
There's a whole wave of health and mental clarity
mm.
practitioners out there who, if you give them the chance, we can change the country. And I
Oh, we
think,
really can.
yeah,
I also think back on my past, and all my life experience and the car crash that was my teeth.
yeah.
And if I had these tools growing up, I would also make very different choices, and perhaps who I would marry too would have been a different choice if I was empowered at the time. And yeah, I would have made much more healthy choices for myself and for my kids growing up. But I didn't have that knowledge then, but I have it now. And a bit like you, I want everybody to have this knowledge. I want everyone to have the tools to really step into their potentiality and live their best lives, because I don't think we are. I think we get so caught up in our everyday life and in our thoughts and got to do this, got to do this, because we're so busy, right? We don't sometimes take a step back and be like, are we really happy? Is this really what we want to be doing with our days? Is this taking us to what our goals are in the future? And I think that's the thing, is to remember every day, is this decision I'm making taking me where I want to go in the future? Because I never used to think like that. I just used to live on impulse, and now I don't. I'm really thinking about decisions before I make them.
So, Lisa, I also want to ask you about your judgments and your kind of
Yes.
thoughts as you were entering prison. You are one of the calmest people I've ever met. You've got the ability to tap into other people's frequencies, which means that you've got that ability yourself. Where did your self judgments, come when you were asked to go into prison service? Clearly, it's a prison, and there are going to be criminals there. Where did your frequencies play out when you were asked to go into prison
But my
system?
fears just immediately came up. My fears were, am I able to hold the energy in the room with people I've never met? How am I going to feel incarcerated? Because I'm going to be locked in the concrete rooms with these guys.
Was that
How am I?
was that fear, as in scared fear,
Yeah,
or
I was scared.
nervous?
Of course. And I get like this. Before I actually do something, fear comes up, and it's all my projections from my past, going into the future thinking I'm going to be so scared. And also my experiences with angry men, I had an alcoholic father, and I had to deal with a lot of anger and violent behavior. For me, and also the funny thing is, the beginning of last year, I was just like, I'm not going to work with men, and I'm not going to work with trauma. I'm going to just work with women, doing women's group, and doing like step into, dealing with their potentiality and not like dragging up all the trauma of the past. And look what I'm doing now. I'm working with the most traumatized people in the whole world.
Yeah.
So that was all my fear coming up. And when I unpacked my fear, I realized it was actually not based on anything. It was based on the telly. It was based on my father and my past experiences. And actually, that's not relevant to what I'm doing today. So, and I also felt very safe with Coach Mara Taylor, and I felt very safe with Caroline, who came with me too. And I realized, actually, you know what, I can do this, and I do have the tools inside me. And I might not have the language that carries with them, but what I can bring to the table is I can give them the unconditional love and help them be seen, because they didn't have that growing up. They didn't have someone to really listen to them and really paid attention and saw them for the men that they are. And that's my ability, and that's what I can bring to the table. I can shine a light for them, and I can help them. I don't know, just feel as if they're important, because every being is important.
I'm pausing because I've got kids who are in teenage years, and something that plays on my mind all the time is that, am I getting sucked into this whole achievement system of achieve
Mm,
X, achieve Z, and I'm not actually pausing and understanding who they can be and what they can be. So
mm,
applying what you just said to everyday life as a father, I can
mm.
see how I would tap into a frequency to pause myself in those situations. But but again, going back to your judgments, could you give us a flavour of the type of prisoners you had? What kind of crimes had
It's
they?
maximum security. So, like, the worst crimes. It's all,
Murder,
yeah, all of them. I mean, there was one guy I spoke to who has 3 back-to-back life sentences. But Sand, I'm not going in there sitting saying, "What did he do?" Because I don't know.
understood.
I don't want to know what they did, because again, my judgment might come out. I want to teach. I want to. It's important for me to treat everybody the same, and for me to do that, I don't want to know the heinous things that they've done, and I don't want it to cloud my judgment towards them. I just need to love and accept the person who's in front of me,
Yeah.
right? It's through reading their life stories afterwards that I realised what they had got up to. I mean, it's murder, it's larceny. What is larceny? Grand larceny, stealing cars. It's all the American terms. Stealing cars, shoplifting. Maybe shooting someone in the shop. All that, like, they're banged up for good reason, because they've done heinous things. But some of them have. And there was this one guy who was sent to prison when he was 17. He was standing next to someone who killed someone. So he was standing next to someone who pulled the trigger for a gun, and he was sent down for life. And for me, I was just like, that's interesting. That didn't feel right to me, because he wasn't the person to commit the crime. But in America, if you're there, you have to be accountable too, because he didn't stop the crime happening. He was just there. So in that situation, I was just like, wow, should he really be in life in prison? It
So so
must be a
so
tough pill to swallow.
So it helps you to understand where someone's coming from, where they're wired from, and ultimately where that's led to. Now, once you completed this exercise with I don't want to keep your friends and the prisoners with your group, what impact have you heard, or what impact have you seen that it's had on their broader life, right? And so they have a life restricted to prison. What kind of daily actions and daily behaviors and small wins have they been able to implement off the back of what you've done?
Oh, sleeping better, less anxious. They react less. A few of them saw their potentiality in the session. So they want to be the best version of themselves, because they intend to step into that potentiality. So they want to behave themselves in prison so they can get out quicker. I can't say this is just in a dance. This is GOGI within a dance.
Yeah.
It's the new technique. I can't say that in a dance has changed their lives, but what I can say is that the tools of GOGI within a dance are very profound, and we're still getting the data back, Sanj. That's the thing. And it's interesting, because the changes I see with the prisoners, the changes I experience with my clients here, who aren't in prison, but they're in prison of their own minds. So it's the same thing, that there's a knock-on effect to how they live in their families. There's a knock-on effect to who they are as a parent. There's a knock-on effect to, instead of reacting to the kid, they're stepping back and thinking, actually, what does my child need right now? Rather than me shutting up my child because they're having a tantrum. Why are they having the tantrum? So it's helping them, I call it the silent witness, like it helps them get out of themselves and have perspective to what's going on. It's about doing things differently for the best of everyone. And it's not just the prisoners, it's everyone who's in this process.
And that's absolutely amazing because, again, I go back to the fact that these are guys with very little hope, and you're giving them hope. You're giving them a different lens and a different perspective, which makes a lot of the problems that I see with clients and generally seem so much smaller. How do we everyday humans get ourselves into these prisons? So some people may have obesity issues, which are not genetic, which are not due to medical conditions. It's because of poor choices, right? They jump for another donut or glass of wine. Some people have diabetes as a result. Other people can't sleep properly and they look at the habits around that. Other people have poor relationships with their kids and families. I'm not going to demean those problems, but in the context of where the prisoners have been able to get their internal freedom compared to the freedoms that exist in the external world, isn't it all just a little bit pathetic how we've all put ourselves into these prisons?
I was in that prison, Sanj. I've lived in that prison for many, many, many years. When I was modeling, I was 100% in that prison. I was using food to soothe myself. I was eating crisps, chocolate when I felt unhappy. In my 20s, I was using drugs because I felt so freaking miserable. I just wanted to numb out because my reality, how I felt inside was so painful. It was just my way of coping because I didn't have any skills to be able to cope with that. And yeah, you say, we look at it and it's pathetic, but at the time, I just had no self-esteem. I was a projection holder for what everybody else wanted me to be, and I didn't know what I had to offer in life. And it's only through a little bit like you when you were saying, your situation brought you to your knees in the train station. I had a similar thing. I had to be, literally, life had to take me to my knees in order for me to do things differently. But that was my path. Other people don't have to take that extreme path of, that much pain that I put on myself. And it's only through that I started learning about therapy, and I started realizing that there are other ways of doing things, and they were realizing that there are healthy choices that we can make in our lives that will help us be the best version of ourselves that we can be and be people we can be proud of, so we can pass it forward to help others. And I feel that that's my job now. I don't feel like I'm the healer. I feel that I'm a person who can pass you the tools to heal yourself. And that's what I feel that my purpose is now.
And what do you say to the people who just can't let go of the past? And so clearly, a lot of the prisoners will look back and say, why did I do this? Why was I present in this situation? Similarly, I have clients to say, why did my employer do this to me? Why did I not get that promotion? Why did my wife or my husband do that? It's really hard to stop looking backwards. What kind of advice and tips do you give to people to not just stop looking backwards, but to move forward from there?
Yeah, there's a technique called let go, which is basically if you have these self-diminishing thoughts about like being stuck in the past, it's like you can imagine like taking your thoughts out of your head, putting them in your hand, scrumpling them up and letting them go. And it's about holding yourself, claiming responsibility for who you are today. You can't change the past. The past is the past. But what you can do is change today. And it's about getting to yourself, learning that all you have is today and you can make the best choices for today. If you keep remunerating on the past, you're just going to go on that spiral of hate and you're going to be on the like, why did I do this? And I should have done this. You can't change that. So change today and just let the past go by doing this squash thing, letting it go and claiming responsibility for, now. Because like I said, you can't change the past. All you can change is today.
And if you can do that in the prison system, then it should be relatively much more straightforward to do that in the regular world. Clearly, it all sounds really, what's the word, very, very linear. It sounds like, meet these prisoners, intervene, they wake up the next day and they're different people. How do you cope with the troughs? So no doubt these prisoners will get re-triggered in the prison system.
Mm-hmm.
there will be things out there that will remind them that they may never be getting out again.
Mm-hmm.
Similar to regular life, there may
Mm-hmm.
be people who feel trapped. What does your inner dance and GOGI teach people about bouncing back when those moments happen?
You always have control over things. There's a tool called 5 second light switch. So when you get triggered or you're in your thoughts or whatever the feeling is, give yourself a moment. You take a breath. You feel your breath going into your belly. So the more you breathe into your belly, the more you're going to be putting oxygen around your body, into your head, into your brain, so you can think more clearly. Because what happens when you're in a situation, I don't know about you, but I shallow breathe, so I contract. So it's about opening yourself up, letting the oxygen go around your body. And then there's this thing called 5 second light switch. So you choose 5 behaviors that are positive for yourself. So for me, if I get triggered, best thing for me is to go and sit under a tree. You might not want to do that. That's my thing. Or I will go for a walk with my dog. Or I will phone a friend of mine. Or I will think about my kids and think about what decision would be the best for me for my kids. So I'll think of the positive things in my life. So when I'm okay, let's talk about the computer and tech. So when I'm in that headspace of like, oh, I'm totally useless, I can't do this, everything's overwhelming, I will do my 5 second light switch. I'll go away, I'll sit under a tree, I'll calm down, take a breath deep into my stomach, then I'll come back with the resources to know that I've actually taken some time out and I can deal with this now. So it's a very simple trick. There's another trick that I've learned. This is nothing to do with GOGI, which is what I tell all of my clients, and it's called BEN. And the acronym is BEN. So first thing, if you're in a situation, you get triggered, you're at work and your boss is being a nightmare, right? And he's like having a go at you and you're triggered. First thing to do is breathe. So again, take that belly breath into your tummy. E means escape. Leave, go out the room, say you need to go to the bathroom, whatever it is, get out. And so when you escape, which is the E, you realize, okay, so you take a breath, you escape. When you come back in the situation, you're going to be in a new role. So N stands for new role. And what that means is you're going to embody someone else. So for me, I like to embody Oprah, because for me, Oprah is like some kick-ass, amazing, strong, powerful woman. So when I go back in that circumstance again, I'm not going to be me. I'm going to be her. I might not have her accent because I can't do an American accent. However, I'm going to walk like her. I'm going to stand up straight and I'm going to be in my power when I go back in that situation. And it's funny enough, when you go back and you're actually someone else. I also use Khaleesi from Game of Thrones for me because she was beautiful and young, but very powerful. So I will come back in the circumstance. And it's weird because if you change up your energy, the energy around you changes as well. So you'll find that the person reacting to you is not going to be reacting to you in the same way because you're empowered. You're not like the victim being shouted at. You're like coming back being like, okay, no, I've got this. I'm not going to react, but I've got this. So it's a completely different feeling. So I find that really useful and I use it a lot of the time.
That's amazing tips, and everyone should try and beat Ben. Should we do a live coaching session? Because I think I need to be coached on a few things.
All
Right?
right then.
And so where do I begin with this? I think where do I begin with this? Everything you just described sounds absolutely perfect, and I've detached myself from triggers that can lead to negative behaviors. And a lot of my friends have said to me, this energy that you've created around yourself sounds we're being sucked into it. You're a different version and we love it. But I have found that during this journey, I've become so, what's the word? So untriggered, non-triggered, or I just don't get triggered, even in
Great.
situations where I should get triggered,
Mm-hmm.
right? And so I think I've become humble but timid,
Mm. Timid.
right?
Why do you say timid though?
Yes, and I knew you'd pick up on that because there are certain things that warrant a reaction, and I think that I have this overarching monk gliding over my head, which is preaching Bhagavad Gita to me and saying, step away, breathe, don't react. When in fact, that can get treated or translated into we can say anything here, we can do anything because this guy's not going to react. I'm currently going through this confusion in my head to say, right, you're not going to react like you used to many years ago. That was really aggressive. You've now reached a stage of nothing's going to own you. You own your own emotions. to then actually beginning to get a little bit concerned that there are certain things that have happened that do warrant a reaction from me, but I just need to frame that reaction properly. So I fear that I'm almost being ridden over because I've become so calm.
How are your boundaries?
My boundaries, I think they've become a lot tighter.
Hmm.
So boundaries in terms of community become a lot tighter. My boundaries
Hmm.
in terms of being able to get upset by stuff, I
Hmm.
think that's become too strong. And so I
Hmm.
think I think I'm almost unfallible right now. It's like you can say anything to me, and I was to say, well, there's some positive in that. And if I take that onto a work perspective,
Hmm.
I can have bad outcomes that are just not right,
Hmm.
and I can just walk away from it. But in fact, I need to develop a mechanism to not just be so accepting and so calm and so zen, but not be
Hmm.
aggressive, but actually find a path in the middle.
Adjective language. I think it's that because I asked you about the boundaries because as much as we say that we don't react to things, it's important that in situations that we also have our boundaries. So
Yeah,
if something isn't right, it's not a question of not saying it's not right. It's like saying, actually, that isn't right. That doesn't sit well with me. That isn't right. And having the confidence to be able to say that. You don't have to react. You don't have to say it in a nasty way, but just being like, that doesn't sit right for me. That's fine for
yeah,
you. It doesn't sit right for me. Or like, maybe we have a difference of opinion on this. You know, this doesn't work for me. It's having being able to speak up in the moment as well. I'm still practicing this. I find it hard speaking up in the moment because I go, my reaction is freeze. So in hindsight, I'm just like, oh, I wish I said that. But in the moment, I'm practicing myself to speaking up in the moment, which I find quite hard. But it feels to me what you're saying is because you're so relaxed, which is wonderful. I mean, what freedom you get from being like that. But it's also having you've gone too far one way. You've gone too far
yeah.
the other way. It's about kind of like meeting in the middle and having your boundaries as well and having a voice in the moment. So when
Mm,
things aren't right, you state it, but in
yeah,
a nice way.
I agree. I agree. In fact, a monk said to me just last week as I was sitting on a bench near the Hare Krishna temple, which you know very well in Oldham, and I spoke to a monk there, and he said something to me which sat with me beautifully, and I think it would sit beautifully with the prison community that you go to. He said, "If your intentions are pure, even the wrong path can take you to the right destination."
Oh,
And
he's so right. I love that. It is
that
all
is
about intention, isn't it, Sanj? That's the
it
thing.
is. It is. And so the way I live with it now, and I've actually changed now, I've said, actually, my intention is clarity. My intention is to understand. And if that means that I need to pull someone up, book a meeting with them, and say, look, I didn't agree with what you did, and I may appear a bit more direct than I usually do, I'm actually okay with that now because my intentions are pure.
Yeah.
So, and it's like the guy that you said who got put into prison because he was a witness or he was there, his intention may not have been to be there.
Mm,
He but they've put him on the wrong path in prison. But
mm.
ultimately, he's building some core values there, and that's going to take him to the right destination. I think that's how I deal with it.
Yeah, it is all about intention. And that's one thing I always check myself out in everything I do. What is my intention in this? And I've got to space now that my intention is always pretty pure. I always want to get the best out of people. I always want to get the best out of my clients and I want to get the best out of myself. So, we all make mistakes. Everyone makes mistakes and that's how we learn and grow. But it's about not beating yourself up about them. And it's about knowing that this is a learning experience and knowing that you got to give love. If everybody came from that loving place of unconditional love, the world would be a very different place. And you and your intentions, it's a loving intention because you're trying to bring the best out in everyone, just like I am too. So that's channeling love, San.
Absolutely. And talking about intentions, what's your intentions for the rest of this recording? So I think what I'd like to understand is where does Lisa Butcher go next? If after the last recording we did, if you'd said to me you'd be doing a tour of the prison system in
I've
California,
laughed. I'd be like, yeah,
California,
right.
California, meeting angry men, I would have said, "Give me a break, Lisa. Yeah, where are you going next?"
I'm going back to prison. I'm going back in June. I'm going to be there until October. I'm writing these with Caroline. We're writing these training manuals with Coach Mara Taylor as well. I'm going to be working very hands-on with the prisoners. In order to bring it back to the UK, I want to get this commission. I'd like to make a documentary out of it because I love seeing the transformation in people. So what I would love is to get a documentary out of this. I want to bring it to the prison system in the UK. And then I just want to start building up my business more, I think, and just like really, this year doesn't feel as if it's much about making it money for me because I'm volunteering for this whole
Yeah,
thing. But I think that this year is more about learning and growing and, just doing the best that I can possibly do for people who don't have a voice and just keep working on myself as I'm doing it. So that's going to be this year. And most of this year is going to be in America. Yeah, what else do I need to do? I need to finish my website. I've got my meditations. I've made all these chakra meditations within a dance music behind them. I've got two of them. I need to finish that off as well. So yeah, I just need to like do bits and bobs and help as many people as I can, Sam.
absolutely amazing. You've got a lot going on, and I think I may know some people who can help you with the whole TV production side of this,
Right.
which is really important. If there's any parting words which you'd like to give, it's a quite difficult ask actually. We're not talking about nutrition, we're not talking about biohacking here. We're talking about spirituality, community,
Mm,
belief, and it's very
yeah.
hard to sum that up, to be honest. But given what you're doing with prisoners, and
Yeah.
given the audience, which is generally people looking for clarity with longevity, what are the kind of parting thoughts you would like to give to them?
When I'm in a funk, and this is what I suggest to my clients, do service. Go and help someone else. When I'm feeling as if I've got not much to offer and my resources are low, I will go and make someone smile. And you could do the smallest thing. You could just be talking to the postman, and the postman could be having a terrible day and he might even be thinking of committing suicide. And by you smiling, taking time out, acknowledging him, acknowledging the human in front of you, could change his world, and in turn it will change your world. So my thing is about giving back. And if everybody could do that every day and do something for others every day, I think it would make a world of difference.
Wow. Wow, wow. They are absolutely amazing thoughts, actually. And if you layer that back, you said, realize there's a human in front of you. I think our lives have become so transactional.
Mm-hmm.
Again, in my workplace, I've got a reputation of being a human leader. So if I can see that someone is behaving in a way which is not in line with their normal behaviors, 5 years ago, I would have jumped on that guy and gotten fired.
Mm-hmm.
But now I tend to say, "What's up?"
Yeah.
And a mother will be ill. It should be an issue at home.
Mm.
I've just found that I get loyalty through that. I get
Yeah.
loyalty, and I've even gone as far in previous jobs, and there'll be people listening to this saying, "Bloody hell, this bugger, we paid him to do this." But I've even gone as far as saying to people, "Look, I know you don't have any annual leave. Just take a week off and go home to Spain." Um,
Beautiful.
so I fully agree with you. I think there's always a reason why people have a certain face on them. And before you communicate, before you
Mm.
discuss a matter with them, whether it's your wife,
Mm.
whether she's going through, menopause, whether it's a friend who's going
Mm.
through different things, just take a pause and understand what's creating that.
Yeah, because you don't know what's going on in their lives. So you can make a big difference. And also, don't judge others. Judge yourself, right? Because I've gone out and I've had the face on and I've been in a bad mood and all that kind of stuff. And it's not nice. It's like, but if I go out and I'm curious about people, a bit like you, I ask the why. Or can I help you? Why are you feeling this way? Or someone's angry to me. I'll meet his anger, but then their anger, then I'll bring it down and be like, why are you angry? Let me help you. I can help, you're not alone. It's all right. And then you can diffuse things and you can really get to know the person underneath because we've all got issues going on. We've all got struggles and fears and everything. And it's about us all coming together and helping each other
It
and
is.
not
It
going
is.
into reaction.
It is. We're not going to get time to cover this, but I just thought what you're doing in the prison system is absolutely amazing, but it will fall down unless the environment in the prison system supports this. And so I think going inside people's minds, going
Mm-hmm.
inside and create that homeostasis is fantastic. But as part of your conversation with the prison systems, there needs to be kind of discussions around access to fresh air, access to quiet spaces, nutrition, exercise facilities, even stuff like gardens to grow stuff. I think, yeah, um, if you start getting involved in the kind of holistic 360 degrees of this, I think you can create a community within a very difficult community in the prison system and create huge change there.
I think the problem is, Sanj, is I'm with you 100% with what you said, is other people might listen to you and they're like, well, they're prisoners. They've done something wrong. They should be locked up. They shouldn't be given a chance. Why should they be allowed out in a...
On my socials. I'm expecting those
Yeah,
comments on
why,
my socials.
why should they be allowed to go and enjoy the sun and do their gardening and live normal lives? They're there to be punished. So it's changing that mentality, I think. And again, understanding why they were there in the first place and what they're back. Once you understand the why of things, you react less to things. It's very easy for us to say, oh, they're evil people in prison. They should be locked away. But actually, they're souls that have made big mistakes. And, you know, if they want to make a change, they want to hold themselves accountable, they let them do it. Let them be reformed. Let them try to be the best version of themselves that they can be. But I think I'm going to have problems getting this in the prison system in the UK. That's why I want to have as much data as I possibly can get from America, so I can back up everything I'm saying. But in America, it's easy because of Coach Mara Taylor. She's opened all the doors and rolled out the red carpets for us. In England, it's going to be a very different thing, because I'm not going to be dealing with leaders, the guys who are holding themselves accountable and wanting to be better. I'm going to be dealing with the guys who are just off the streets. So it's going to be a different vibe and a different feeling. So we'll see if England is open to this progression and open to see if they will do it. I think I'm going to have my work cut out for me, Sanj.
We'll get there, Lisa. We'll get there.
I hope so.
At the end of the day, with all respect to the prisoners, you are changing their lives. But I view this as I don't want to use the word experiment. It's not an experiment. I view this as a life case study of how fundamental change, which looks at your inner wiring, your homeostasis, the way you flow your energy through certain priorities, how it works in the most strictest and toughest environment.
Yeah.
If we can take that model and apply that backwards through society, it should become easier.
Yeah, I totally agree.
So I think that's the learning to take that. Let's not focus on the fact that it's prisoners. Yes, it is prisoners, but it's working in that condition. Imagine if people who have put themselves into prisons that don't exist start applying this, which is what I try to do with my clients, which you're trying to do. And I just think we need to spread the word a lot more around this. And a lot of this is, unfortunately, Lisa, a lot of this is going to come down to how good you are at the marketing of it and the branding of it and the PR. It says the lady who's been on the covers of magazines and TV. But I think that's where it comes out. Look, I'm a coach myself, but there's many coaches out there who are charging thousands and thousands and thousands for X, Y, and Z. As much as can be made available to people through media, through publications, through documentaries, the better, I think. And good luck, and I'm with you all the way on this.
Thank you, love. I really appreciate it.